I'd left home when I was 17 and I'd sort of bummed around for a bit in bedsits and hostels and shared houses, and then the house that I was living in had got broken into and trashed, so myself and my friend lost everything. So we went down to the homeless department, 8:30 in the morning at the old egg box. You could turn up in those days, and if you registered as homeless, you were given 3 options. You could move on to Hyde Park, Park Hill or Kelvin. And probably by about 10:30, 11 I had keys to a flat, and I moved in with nothing. I had newspaper against the windows for curtains, and I had a quilt and a stool, and I slept on the floor. But within about a week, my neighbours, who I hadn't previously known up till then, came knocking on my door and said, "Oh, you've just moved in, do you need anything? We've got some curtains," or "Oh, we can have this." And they gave me things like bedding, blankets, furniture, and within a week my flat was fully furnished, just from the kindness of people that didn't even know me but knew that I would have been on my uppers starting out and gave me things for nothing. I moved around quite a bit. I think it was 6 flats in 7.5 years. It has to be one of the friendliest places I've ever lived, because your neighbours were your neighbours. They were bang next door to you, and everyone was in the same boat. You just stuck up for each other. It didn't matter how old you were, what you looked like, where you'd come from. Everyone was just really, really nice. The landings were really, really wide, which I think is why they coined the phrase streets in the sky, because they were very, very wide. And there was a milkman that would go around with his little milk truck, and there was a man called Andy. People call him Andy the Potato Man, because he'd bring the 56-pound sacks of potatoes, which, if you haven't got a lot of money, you know, they're great to keep you going for a couple of weeks. My experience of Kelvin, I never had any trouble, never got broken into. I had some of the best friends I've ever had lived on there, and people were genuinely very, very nice. So I think it had the bad press was somewhat unwarranted. As people moved off particular sections, if a section was cleared, they would put up the big metal gates to fence it off, to make it so it was secure. And obviously, as people moved off and the staff became less as well, it did feel quite unsafe at times. I don't think I was ever scared, but it was quite unsettling, because most people didn't have a phone line, because you couldn't afford to have a phone line. It was too expensive. So we had security guards on site that would parade around, and there was a main concierge at the bottom where they would be there. And for the tenants that were left at the end, we were given 2-way radios, so if anything happened we could radio through and someone would come up. The day I left, I sat in the removal van and I cried, because I was so sad. I didn't want to go. I suppose it was my first proper home, and so for it to be pulled down, it was very emotional. I actually kept the keys to my flat, which I wasn't supposed to. You're supposed to hand them in. I did go back, and I went in one day, and the furniture I'd left, because I'd bought some new furniture, so I'd left a sofa and a few things, and someone had been in and turned them upside down and made a bit of a mess. So I went and tidied up. I think as a child going past, it was quite scary. It looked big and imposing and quite grey and brutal, but as an adult I saw it in a different light. I quite like that brutal, concrete, sort of very angular look, and I think if you look at aerial photos from the top, it's got a really lovely shape as it weaves, sort of meanders around the area, and I actually really like that. It would have been nice if they could have saved a bit and done something. I don't know what they would have done with it, whether they could have converted it into sort of nice, luxury apartments, which is what seems to happen to every single building these days. Glass front, shiny, modern and new. But then again, I don't know if that would have been right. I don't think I'd have liked that.